Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharidhari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharidhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Bharatari. Jamunatira Bharatari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Yopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharidhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Jamunatira Vanasari. Jamunatira Vanasari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare John Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotara Shatta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. John Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotara Shatta Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jai Nita Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for Srimad Bhagavatam class. So first we'll read from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. This is a chapter entitled A Threat Against ISKCON. Here we go. Although the spiritual master suffers for his disciples' mistakes, Prabhupada's perspective was not simply negative. He continued chanting and lecturing in the temple and inviting the leaders of his movement to visit him in the ideal center of Los Angeles. But he also corrected the diseased mentality wherever it appeared. When, for example, Guru Das wrote from London, to say that they had allowed an Indian guest to lecture in the temple while sitting on Prabhupada's Vyasasan. Prabhupada immediately wrote back, correcting him. And this is the letter. I'm surprised how you allowed Mr. Parikh to sit on the Vyasasan. You know that the Vyasasan is meant for the representative of Vyasadeva, the spiritual master, but Mr. Parikh does not come in the parampara to become the representative of Vyas. Neither does he have any sound knowledge of Vaishnava principles. I understand from your letter that sometimes discussions on Aurobindo philosophy are done by Mr. Parikh from the Vyasasan. So I'm a little surprised. How did you allow this? I think you should rectify immediately all these mistakes, as stated by you in the last 2 lines of your letter. Quote, I think the best thing to do is to stop his class. Nonsense ought not to be tolerated, end quote. And I'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Reading from chapter number 8. Character of Bharat Maharaj. And today we're doing text number 27. It's in prose, so let's read it. Tadanim api parshva vartinam atmajam iva nu shochantam abhivikshamano mriga eva viniveshita mana visrijya lokam imang saha mrigena kalevarang mritam manuna mrita janma nusmritir itaravan mriga shariram avapa. Word for word. Tadanim, at that time, api, indeed, Parshva Vartinam, by the side of his deathbed, Atmajam, his own son, Ava, like, Anu Shochantam, lamenting, Abhivikshamana, seeing, Mrige, in the deer, Ava, certainly, Abhini Veshita Mana, his mind was absorbed, Visrijya, giving up, Lokam, world, Imam, this, Saha, with, Regena, the deer, Kalevaram, his body, Mritam, died, Anu, thereafter, Na, not, Mrita, destroyed, Janma Anusmriti, remembrance of the incident before his death, Itara Vat, like others, Mriga Shariram, the body of a deer, Vapa, got. Translation. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Purport. There was a difference between Bharat Maharaj's acquiring a deer body and others acquiring different bodies according to their mental condition at the time of death. After death, others forget everything that has happened in their past lives. But Bharat Maharaj did not forget. According to Bhagavad Gita, Yang yang vapi smaran bhavang tyajatyante kalevaram tang tang ivaitikante ya siddhatat bhav bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail, Bhagavad Gita 8.6. After quitting his body, a person gets another body according to his mental condition at the time of death. At death, a person always thinks of that subject matter in which he has been engrossed during his life. According to this law, Because Bharat Maharaj was always thinking of the deer and forgetting his worship of the Supreme Lord, he acquired the body of a deer. However, due to his having been elevated to the topmost platform of devotional service, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. This special benediction saved him from further deterioration. Due to his past activities in devotional service, he became determined to finish his devotional service, even in the body of a deer. It is therefore said in this verse, Ritam, although he had died, Anu, afterwards, Na Rita Janma Nu Smritir, Itaravat. He did not forget the incidents of his past life as others forget them. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam, Brahma Samhita 554. It is proved herein that due to the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is never vanquished. Due to his willful neglect of devotional service, a devotee may be punished for a short time. But he again revives his devotional service and returns home back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us this morning for Bhagavatam class. What we're doing right now actually is the exact opposite of what Jada or Bharat Maharaj did. We currently are in the association of devotees, so this protects us from falling down. And that's basically one of the main lessons from this pastime, is that if you leave the association of devotees, then you can find yourself in a sticky situation. So I'll get to that as we go through this morning's class. So I've got a couple of points I want to go through. Just want to kind of summarize the whole pastime, and then in a similar way, again, kind of summarize everything by going through the whole chapter. So the second part of the class is based on my own recent reading of the fifth canto. And the first part was just what came to mind as I was going through it, just reading the text and purport. So this is a very exciting part of the Bhagavatam. All the elements are there for a great story. You know, first of all, like, I mean, this pastime spans many chapters, and there's a build up to it. I mean, you could say it starts in the beginning of the canto. I mean, depending on how you want to look at things, everything starts from the beginning of time, depending how you want to connect it. But basically, you've got fathers, and they have children, and then they have children, etc., etc. And so you've got your lineage, and you're connected. So just going into the immediate past, we have Rishabhadev, who is Bharat Maharaj's father. And of course, before that, we heard about King Maharaj Nabi, who had Rishabhadev as his son. So there's all these connections here. But at this point, basically, to cut it short, God's your father, or a Shaktivesh avatar, an incarnation of God is your father. That's pretty far out for a start. And then second of all, you have 99 brothers, and not just that you've got 99 brothers, but they're all like far out personalities. You know, they're Maharatis ruling the world. They're great sages, Yogendras. The other 81, they're all like Brahmanas, perfect Brahmanas. So basically your family's perfect. God's your father. It doesn't get much better than this. And then you happen to be, I'm speaking about Bharat Maharaj here from his point of view, you happen to be the eldest, and you become the emperor of the whole world when your dad leaves it to you. And then because you've got such an amazing father, such an amazing family, and you yourself are so amazing, you become ecstatic in love of God. You give up your beautiful wife, your loving family, all your money, because you're ruling the whole world. You give up all your entourage, you give up the kingdom, you give up everything, because you got so much taste for Krishna and love for Krishna that it's not such a big deal to do that. And you're on such a high platform, you're practically ready to go back to Godhead, and then you become attached to a cute baby deer. It's like, what the hell? Talk about Maha anticlimax, isn't it? It's like all the things are there for you to be like the greatest success in history, and then like a baby deer takes you out. It's like, what the hell's going on here? So, from one point of view, you could immediately go, something doesn't smell quite right here. I think this is a didactic pastime. I think maybe Bharat Maharaj purposely fell down. And as we hear from other scriptures, that is actually the case. It's mentioned in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. But that's not the point that's being illustrated here. The point that's being illustrated here mainly is that it doesn't matter what your credentials are, how amazing you are, if you have the ball and you're about to score and then you drop the ball, you don't score. You have to hold on to the ball. You have to wait until you've actually crossed the finish line, so to speak. So you become attached to a cute baby deer. Maharaj Brar, he's become attached to a cute baby deer, throw away your spiritual practices, and then not only that, you've become attached to the deer, thrown away your spiritual practices, then you die while you're absorbed in thoughts of the deer, which is exactly the text today. And you become a cute baby deer in your next life. So this is a bit of a drama. And the really nice part about this is that it shows Bhagavad Gita in action. And that's the most beautiful thing about the Bhagavatam, is basically it is Bhagavad Gita, but just showing it in real life. It shows all the principles of Bhagavad Gita in action. So we're hearing in the purport, Prabhupada's quoting Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yang Yang Vapi Smaram Bhavam. Whatever you remember at the time of death, that's where you go. So we're right, you could say, in the juicy part of the story. Everything has been successful, amazing, all auspicious, incredible. Maharaj Bharat was ruling the world, and he gave it up for the high taste of love of God. But then, boom, he drops it. So what? And not only that, not only has he dropped his practice, but he's become a deer. And right at this point, this is why it's juicy. He realizes, whoops. So that's good. It's good to realize that you've made a mistake, because then you can turn things around. If you don't realize you've made a mistake, then you just keep going down. And of course, he realized he made a mistake because of Krishna's mercy. He made the mistake. He got the body of a deer, but by Krishna's grace, here you go. Here's your memory. You know everything that's happened. And then so he's thinking, oh, wow. I'm a deer. I was that guy. I was in love with God. Now I'm a deer. Like, whoops, what did I do? So, quite exciting. What will happen next? And I'm sure most people here have probably read the Bhagavatam, so they know how the rest of the story plays out. But I'll just go now into the lessons, which is the main points here. So, as all great devotees do, they teach us lessons. So the first one is the classic point. Even if you're on the platform of Bhava Bhakti, you've practically made it back to Godhead. You're like one step away, you could say. You've made 99 steps, you've got one more to go. Still, you can fall down. You can choose to jump off the staircase if you like, break your legs. You can fall down if you're not careful. And the main point that's illustrated in this pastime that Prabhupada likes to stress, which is a very wonderful point to stress, because you could say in one essence it's the whole sum and substance of devotional service, is association with devotees. He fell down because he didn't take guidance, or that's one angle. He fell down because he didn't take guidance, which is in one sense associating with devotees, or he fell down because he isolated himself. That's the other issue. And I heard this point being mentioned recently by S.B. Keshav Maharaj, because someone also brought up this point about Bharat Maharaj. And the point that S.B. Keshav Maharaj was making is that solitude is good. We do need time to ourselves. We need time alone to study the Shastra, to chant our rounds, not be disturbed by external things. You know, stay home, stay put, stay in one place, just focus. Yes, So you do that for a certain part of the day. You read, you chant your rounds. But then after that, you interact with the world. So solitude in itself is not bad, but we just need to know when and how to apply it. So Maharaj Bharat took it to the extreme degree. He completely separated himself from all distractions, which was good. But he, as Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, the real meaning of being alone is not to literally be alone, but it means to be away from the association of non-devotees. That's real loneliness. Real being alone is to not be with non-devotees. Then you're alone, because you're alone with the devotees in Krishna. So these words in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada often will redefine words like humility. What does that really mean? Knowledge, what does that really mean? Being alone, what does that really mean? And not just that, it's also because it's the practice for this age, Sankirtan. The practice for this age is not dhyan, is not going off into the forest and meditating by oneself. As Arjuna says in the Bhagavad Gita to Krishna, after Arjuna explains in the process of dhyan, he's like, I can't do that. That's not practical. And that's in Dwapara Yuga. And not only is it in Dwapara Yuga, that's Arjuna, who materially is like off the scale in terms of qualifications. And not just that, it's Arjuna, an eternal associate of the Lord. And he's also saying that. So in other words, don't think about doing it yourself. So that's the first main point. We need to associate devotees, connecting, as I was saying, to that point that S.B. Keshavaraj was saying, even if we're on the platform of Bhava Bhakti, we still should associate with devotees, even if just to give them our association and help them, even if just for that reason. But still, generally, it's, as we're seeing here, still, you haven't crossed the finish line. Your car still could run out of petrol. You know, there could be some disaster, so always keep a safety net around you. That's what the devotees are. So that's the first lesson. Second lesson, Krishna is so kind. So Krishna explains the principle in the Bhagavad Gita that if you don't make it, in that same chapter, chapter 6, if you don't make it, then if after short practice, you know, you may go to the heavenly planets, you may get a birth in a Shuchinamgri, Srimatam Gehe. If you fall down after a short practice, then you may take birth in the family of some wealthy people, like that. Or if you've practiced for a long time and then you fall down, then you get birth in a very exalted family. You could say like Bharat Maharaj did, as we'll see sooner or later, because he made it so high in his platform of bhakti before he fell down. After his birth as a deer, he then took birth as Jada Bharat in the family of a very pious Brahmana. So he got a wonderful opportunity in his next life. So that is illustrated there. And in this case, we get a unique flavor of mercy. So we're not hearing about those typical examples in the Bhagavad Gita. We will hear about that later on with Bharat Maharaj when he becomes Jada Bharat. So that's directly Bhagavad Gita in action. But right here, we're getting a special flavor of mercy from Krishna, which is, I'm giving you the blessings because you made it so far in bhakti, but at the same time, you shouldn't have done that. So he gets the body of a deer. Look, I'm going to give you your just desserts because you willfully threw away your bhakti. So I'm going to have to, you know, be the loving father and slap you on the hand for that. At the same time, you know, you've practically made it back to Godhead. So I'll let you remember everything. So you realize, whoops, and you'll just hurry up and get back home back to Godhead. So we see a special flavor of mercy from Krishna here. So that's the second lesson from this pastime. Krishna's always got our best interest in mind. He's looking out for us, just like a loving parent. So Bharat Maharaj gets the realization, he'll get serious, he'll finish his bhakti in his next life. And the third thing, Bhagavad Gita, as we were saying earlier on, 8.6. Whatever you think of at the time of death, you attain that. So we see that practically here with Bharat Maharaj, absorbed in the deer, becomes a deer. But because of his bhakti, he gets remembrance of his past life. But I was thinking, just another classic example in the Bhagavatam of what you think of at the time of death. The most famous story you could say in one sense is that of Ajamil. He was a Brahmana, but then he fell down big time, and for such a big period of his life, he was a rascal. He stole, he cheated, he lied, he murdered, he did you name it to supply money to his family, and he had quite a few kids. I can't remember, 13, 14, I can't remember how many he had, but he had lots of kids. But because at the time of death he thought of Narayan, Ante Narayana Smriti, then he attained a good destination. He didn't immediately go back to Godhead, but he got liberated from his sins. He got the reset button pushed, and he realized, whoops, I should get serious about my devotional service again. And very shortly thereafter, he obtained the supreme destination. So because he remembered the right thing at the time of death, even though he'd been so sinful, he got such great benefit. And similarly, Bharat Maharaj, on the flip side, even though he had such an exalted life, had made it to Bhava Bhakti, was practically ready to go back to Godhead, because he dropped the ball purposely and was quite neglectful, then Krishna gave him a bit of a slap. Krishna didn't cast him, into the abominable species of existence, of course, but just gave him a wake-up call so he'd realize what he'd done and get back on track again. But the point is that both pastimes, that of a Jamil and Bharat Maharaj, show what we think of at time of death has an influence. Whether we're the most sinful rascal or whether we're the most advanced devotee, it has an effect. Of course, as the point's often made, whatever we think of during our life determines what we think of at the time of death. That's there. But we have to take everything into consideration. And that's exactly what Krishna does. Krishna's got his laws. And of course, for his devotee, he may make adjustments or break the rules here and there, but still he wants to try and keep the principles intact so that people take them seriously and don't just get neglectful and lazy and take advantage of Krishna's mercy. So the Lord is involved in our life. Whether we are punished or rewarded, it's good for us. That's sometimes not so easy to accept, as I've brought up so many times in my classes, and I can see in my own practical practice of Krishna consciousness. Before I even met the devotees, I'd already thought the idea of karma was a good idea. I found out about it through Buddhism, and I was thinking, yeah, this sounds quite reasonable and rational. Karma, reincarnation, it finally fits, something that framework of knowledge that fits. But still to this day, I can see that I've got a problem with accepting it in the heart. Just like sometimes when your parents says, no, you shouldn't do that. You may deep down know in your heart that it's for your own good, but you're just like, So for myself as a sadhaka, still trying to purify oneself, I still have a tendency to enjoy and control. So sometimes you get your karma, you're just desserts, Krishna's looking out for you, and then you're like, why did you do that, Krishna? And Krishna's like, well, stop trying to control and enjoy, just hurry up and just become a humble servant and there's no problem. That's your constitutional position. You're not a control and enjoyer. Stop trying to do it. I don't have a problem with you, but if you keep controlling and enjoying, what do you want me to do? You can't come back to Godhead like that. So I have to keep giving you a bit of a wake up so you get back on track. So that's just a bit of a summary of this pastime, going through it from the start right through to where Bharat Maharaj ends up and some of the lessons. And actually, I had a whole other section, but just looking at the time already, I might just pause there and see if anyone else has got anything they'd like to share, any reflections, any comments or any questions, because I've got a whole other big section which probably take quite a bit of time. So does anyone have anything they'd like to add, to comment on, to reflect on, or any questions anyone would like to ask, or I can carry on? No? Okay. I'll just briefly continue for a little bit more and then we can finish up. So my own reading through the section of the fifth canto recently, I went through this, and some main points stuck out. And no doubt so many have commented on these points, but for the sake of reflection and repetition, they're always good things to think about. The first two texts that really struck me were texts 7 and 8, and it helped me reflect on Maharaj Bharat's downfall, the psychology, how he's becoming so compassionate and affectionate towards this deer. and how that basically overwhelms him. It blinds his intelligence. And he says, oh, actually, I won't get to that yet, but as Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 8 to 12, in the purport there, when he's commenting on the point about detachment from wife, home, children, and the rest, Prabhupada makes the point that it's not meant that one should not have any feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. So similarly, it's not that Bharat Maharaj should have said, oh, it's a deer, it's its own karma, let it go to hell, let it die, let it drown, whatever. Sure, he could have saved the deer. Fine, no problem. But to then do what he did and get overly attached and make it its all in all and drop his bhakti, that was obviously going too far. So in our own practice of bhakti, that deer can be many things. And this is one of the main things that I took from this chapter. What does that deer represent for me? What is that object of attachment for me? And actually, someone was mentioning, Hiranyagarbha Prabhu in his class recently was also mentioning this point. You know, whatever that attachment is. So obviously, if it's to a computer, a smartphone, a car, a house, you know, these material things, there may be bigger and bigger attachments, especially the house, you know, you can be very attached to that. And then it gets to the extreme, you know, you got loads and loads of money, which buys the house and buys the car and buys all these other things, so you're attached to all that wealth. But then, of course, deeper than that is attachment to living entities. That can be much deeper. Attachment to the children, attachment to one's spouse, attachments to one's mom or dad, family members like that. So whatever that attachment is, whatever that deer is for us, we need to be careful. So as going back, it's not that one should not have affection for these, and even for the material things, like a house or car. It's not that we shouldn't look after them in Krishna service, but we don't become overly attached. We don't forget that Krishna is the main goal. Krishna is the center of everything. Krishna is the root of the tree, and everyone else is his parts and parcels. And all the things that we use in Krishna service are Krishna's energy. So Krishna always has to remain in the center. Then it's not a problem. And a catchphrase from SBK Shamaraj, he likes to say, a spiritualist isn't owned by anything. All his possessions, his relatives, it's not that he's like owned by all of that, but he owns things to use in Krishna's service. Everything should be engaged in Krishna's service, whereas if it becomes the other way around, we're getting engaged in someone else's service and it's not connected with Krishna, that's a problem. So we have to always keep our eyes on the goal. And I really liked the point that Vrindavan Madhurya made last week. I thought it was a really brilliant example of analogy or comparison where Shivananda Sain, he showed compassion to an animal, to a dog. The dog joined his party as they were traveling. And he looked after it. He fed it prasadam. And he was conscious of it. He was thinking, where is it? When it was missing, he was like, where's that dog? But even though he was concerned and he was affectionate and caring, he didn't drop his bhakti. It's not like he stopped chanting his rounds. It's not like he dropped all his responsibilities of looking after his own family and all the people that he was looking after in that party that was en route to Jagannath Puri. So there's no problem of being compassionate, showing affection, but we just have to be balanced. We don't go over the top, and is what Bharat Maharaj did. And that's the point of this chapter, the main point. That's what attachment can do. If attachment goes unchecked, it isn't monitored, then it can become a problem. So that's where I come to text 9, and I think I'll finish with this, otherwise I'll start getting into a sermon. is Bharat Maharaj, he can see the attachment in text 9. He sees the attachment. He can see it coming, but he says, I shouldn't be envious of this deer and think that for my own welfare I'll be destroyed. Even though this deer is disturbing my spiritual life, it's a helpless person who has taken shelter of me and cannot be neglected. So that may be true. Someone may disturb your spiritual life and they may need some help, but it doesn't mean that you completely go off the path. You may have a brief disturbance in your spiritual life, but you should immediately get back on the path. But he didn't. He continued going off. And that's, I guess I'll conclude with this because it's such a nice point to end on and it connects with the beginning of the class. I don't know how many of you know him here. perhaps some of you do. A wonderful devotee named Gopa Vrindesh. He's a god brother of mine, a disciple of Devanrita Maharaj. He resides in Melbourne. Very, very wonderful devotee. Very, very knowledgeable, at the same time very caring. So the first time I met him, he was here at a festival in New Zealand. And I was fortunate enough to ask a good question. So I asked him because I thought this might be the only time I get to meet him. Fortunately, I've met him many times since, so by Krishna's grace, and I'm very, very pleased that I've got to meet him many, many more times since. But first time I met him, I thought maybe this would be the only time I get to see him. He's god brother of mine. He's senior to me. Seems very sharp onto it. So I asked him, "What's one thing that you can tell me about devotional service that would be the best thing for me to hear?" And he said to me, "The most important thing is to always stay in the association of devotees." And then he gave an example. He said, just like if you're going along on a road and you're traveling down the path, you're on the right track. If you're by yourself, you might go off track. And if there's no one around you and you continue that way, you're still moving forward, but because you've gone a bit off track, now you're all the way over there, 5 kilometers that way. Whereas if someone was with you, or of course many devotees are with you, immediately as you start to veer off a little bit, hey, where are you going? Like, it's this way, back on track. So that's basically the essence of all advice, is that one should associate with devotees, and the more that you have around you, it's like having more mirrors. You can see what's going on, more people checking, keeping you on the right track. And Bharat Maharaj, perfect example, on the platform of Bhav, still fell down. So if we're always in the association of devotees, they'll keep us on track. And we may be very, very neophyte. We may be very materialistic, may have so many flaws and faults, but if we're in the association of devotees, they'll pull us up, they'll correct us, they'll keep us on the right path. And before we know it, if we stay in that association, we can make it to that platform of Bhav. It's possible, but we have to stay in that association. That's the challenge. Whatever dramas come up in that association, we beg forgiveness, we apologize, we try to see our own faults, how we can improve, so we can stay in that association, because it's the essence of life, is to associate with devotees. When we go back to Godhead, we're going to be surrounded by a bazillion, million, unlimited, uncountable number of devotees. So the sooner we can learn to swim, dive, and splash in the ocean of loving exchanges with devotees here, then the sooner we can go back to the perfection of life in the spiritual world, where that's what you're doing all the time. So we're practicing here for what we'll be doing eternally. So thank you very much for listening. I might have gone a little bit over. If there's anyone who'd like to share anything, any questions, otherwise we can wrap it up. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. There's a question on the chat.
Oh, yes. Chat. How do I open that? Chat. Here we go. Chat. Direct message. Who can see the chat? Where does the question? I saw something, but I can't bring it up. Where do I bring? Prabhu, could you please share some insight on how to distinguish between criticism and helping someone get back on track? Yeah, it's a very good question. One immediate model that comes to mind is something again that I've heard from SBK Maharaj. He's got lots of nice sutras. He gives quite an extensive overview of it. I think he has like 4 or 5 points, and it's a really nice framework. So criticism and helping get someone get back on track. One of the first points is that, is it your responsibility to notify that person of whatever it is? That can be the very first question. So if it's not your responsibility, but it is someone else's, but that other person whose responsibility it is doesn't know, then you can notify that person, and then that person can pass it on to the other person in question. Because sometimes if you go directly to that person, maybe the relationship's not right, maybe they're your senior, so many things could be there, and they may not hear it properly. So you may be giving the correct feedback, but they may not hear it right. And of course, our own motivations, unless our own motivations are pure, I guess that's one of the answers to the question as well. Am I purely motivated? If not, then it might be a criticism. So that's, yeah, SBK Shamaraj's model is, first of all, the right person should give the feedback, ideally. So that can be their Shiksha Guru. That's a good place to start. So if the Shiksha Guru doesn't know about it, you can go to their Shiksha Guru, and then their Shiksha Guru can pass on the feedback. That's one way. And then the Shiksha Guru themselves, the one who's authorized to give the feedback, then has to think, well, is it the right time? If I say it right now, will that go down well? Maybe they won't hear it right now. So maybe now's not the right time. I need to wait for the right moment to say it. And then even if you're the right person and it's the right time, then you have to question your own motivations. Am I doing it with the best intentions? It's the right time, but is it the right time for me? Have I got good motivations? Do I have this person's best interests in mind? So if I don't, then even though it may be the right time, it's not the right time for me, because right now I'm not in such a good state of mind. So it has to be ideally the right person, the right time. You have to have the right motivations, and also giving that feedback. So that's one model. But a more simple way of looking at it is, yeah, just what is my intention and my motivation? Because generally, especially in the beginning stages of bhakti, we're not so pure in our intentions and motivations. And often we can, in the name of helping someone, we're actually criticizing them, and we can't always see it. Yeah, it's one thing that I've been thinking more about as I've been spending more time in Krishna consciousness as well. Is our expectations are often very high for devotees, but we're not all pure devotees yet. That's the goal, and the process generally takes more time than we might want it to take, in many cases. So yeah, and if you're still not sure, basically, for example, there's no one else around, um, you feel like you need to give the feedback, still, it's best to bounce it off at least one other person and say, hey, Prabhu, hey, Mataji, this person over here, I think we need to say something, we should bring something up. What do you think? I think like this and that. At least bounce it off one other person, and ideally someone who's at least neutral, someone who doesn't not like that person, because then the other person will be like, yeah, that guy's a jerk. You should tell him, you know. So yeah, always this. I'll finish on this. If you really want to go to one extreme, either find someone who's their best friend, who definitely has their best interests in mind, or someone who thinks totally the opposite to you, and then get the feedback from them as to what you should say and how you should say it. Then you would definitely get a more balanced view. Because if you just ask one of your own friends who's going to say, yeah, I agree with you, then what was the point of consulting them? But if someone you speak to who's going to give you honest feedback, or someone who thinks totally different than you, it'll help be more balanced. Or ideally, as I was saying about the Shiksha Guru point, someone who actually really has their best welfare in mind, that's the person to get the best feedback from, whether or not this piece of information should be handed to that person. And then ideally speaking, it wouldn't even be you, it would be someone who they respect, who they understand as their best friend, like that. So these are some thoughts. I'm sure you've got many of your own thoughts as well. Anyone else want to share anything before we end on that question?
Prabhu, there's one more comment on this in the chat.
It's quite instructive that Bharat Maharaj took his next life without feeling bad about it. Please comment. That's a wonderful point. That's a very, very nice point. Yeah. I mean, that's something, as I was saying before, alluding to earlier, that's something I myself am struggling with still, is that I get the smallest amount of token karma in this life, and immediately I get upset. So I'm light years away from Maharaj Bharat, so what I'm about to say is completely theoretical here. I have zero realization. So he understood. I mean, he obviously was no ordinary person. The fact that he, God's your dad, Rishabhadev, Shaktivesh Avatar, all your brothers are amazing. you are the emperor of the world, and not just that you did a good job, you did a pious job, and you left it because you were in ecstatic love of God, and you're on the highest platform. So practically, Bharat Maharaj is flawless. And then he did something silly. And as I was saying, alluding to, it's mentioned in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, he purposely fell down. So, of course, he's not going to feel bad about it. He understands that was my fault. It was my mistake. Krishna's all merciful. Krishna's been so kind. Krishna has been so kind that he's allowed me to remember my past life and my mistake. Gosh, Krishna's so kind. Rather than, didn't Krishna understand? I was on Bhava Bhakti, man. He should have at least, no, because someone who's on that platform of Bhava Bhakti wouldn't have that mood. They're just so, like if we read a Nectar of Devotion, I think it's 9, I can't remember exactly the number, 8 or 9, qualities of someone who's situated on the platform of Bhava Bhakti. And the first one is forgiveness or tolerance. They're completely forgiving, completely tolerant. So immediately, even if Krishna did do something wrong, which he never will, even if Krishna did, and there was some immediately, would there be forgiveness? But Krishna never does anything wrong. So it's you could say, and that forgiveness went two ways too. It didn't just go towards Krishna or the demigods or the devatas or whoever fault it is now that I've got this dear body, but to oneself as well. Someone on such a high platform, when they make a mistake, they don't beat themselves up about it. They just, immediately action, get right back right on the right track. So Bharat Maharaj, yeah, he didn't feel bad about it. I mean, from one angle, because he purposely did it. So, not when I say purposely did it, not purposely dropped his bhakti and so Krishna's punishing him, but purposely did it. Like he knew what the result would be, not fully like that, but he purposely dropped his bhakti to show what not to do for others to learn from. That kind of purposeful, which is mentioned in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. So that's one angle why he wouldn't feel bad about it. And then the other, any great exalted soul, they never feel bad about what Krishna's doing. That's the very nature of them being an exalted soul. The only that people that seem to have a bad feeling towards Krishna are those that have gone past bhava to praying. We're now to chastising the Lord out of praying. Just like the residents of Vrindavan, like Mother Yashoda's like chasing Krishna with a stick. So Bharat Maharaj hadn't made it to that point yet. So he's not in a position where he can chastise Krishna, but he's at pretty much the closest point to it. So he'll never have any ill feelings or negativity towards Krishna. And one on such a platform, they immediately think all the issues, all the problems. Right? He didn't blame the deer. God, it was that bloody deer. It was me. Immediately. And that's how someone gets to Bhava Bhakti, because they take responsibility for their own mistakes. And I guess I'll finish on that. That's the real sign of progress in bhakti, is we take responsibility for our own mistakes. As long as we think it's your fault, it's your problem, I'm not progressing in bhakti, we're giving you the keys and we've got a lock around our neck and we can't do anything about it until you give the keys back to me. And if you don't even know that you've got the keys and I've given them to you, I'm going to be locked up for eternity. And that's often what happens. This is called victim mentality. We give someone else the keys, they don't even know they've got the keys, and we're locked up for eternity because we're the victim. So Bharat Maharaj didn't have victim mentality. Yeah, so that's some final thoughts on that. And, I think we should probably finish there. Looks, someone's made one final comment and then we'll finish. Dear body and dear body. In English, that sounds interesting. People these days tend to take excessive care of their human bodies, but does that guarantee receiving a human body in the next life? I like that. That's a very nice play on words. Dear body. The body is very dear to one. So Jadabar, because the body was dear to him, he got a dear body. Does it guarantee getting a human body in the next life if one's attached to the body? No, it doesn't. It definitely increases the likelihood if one's attached to a human body. That's there, but one also has to have the karma for it. So those two are the main factors there. We have the desire of what we want, then we have to have the qualification for obtaining it. So yeah, I don't want to keep everyone here. I guess what I'll say, I can answer this question, but maybe if anyone wants to leave because the class is going on, just answering this question. If anyone wants to leave now, please feel free to leave, and then I'll finish answering this question. So yes, there's a nice example I've heard again from SBK Maharaj. I guess you can tell who I've heard a lot from in recent times. He gives this nice example of karma, what our desire is and what our qualification is. So first of all, if you've got a desire to live in a mansion, but you don't have the karma for it, but you've got a strong desire to do it, then basically in your next life, you may actually be in a mansion, but because you don't have such good karma, you'll be born as a dog in that mansion. So you'll be the guard dog in that mansion. Next level up, if you actually do have piety, you do have good karma, and you've got that desire to live in a mansion, then you may very well in your next life have the human body and live in a mansion and own it. So that's the difference between having the desire and the adhikar for it. So you've got both now. And then on top of that, if you practice spiritual life, bhakti, and you've got a desire to live in a mansion, then he said, then one may just end up living in Bhaktivedanta manner. So you live in a mansion, but you're a devotee at the same time. So this is the way we can understand how our qualification and our desire, how they can match up. So yeah, if we don't have the karma, but we have a strong desire, we may kind of get our desire fulfilled, but in such a way that we don't really get to enjoy it or really benefit from it. So we did get it. The dog is living in that mansion, but he can't really enjoy it. He's just the dog. He has to guard it. Whereas the human being kind of gets to enjoy it because they've got the adhikar for it. So I'll finish there. I think we've gone on long enough. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying so long. Appreciate your time. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for attending Bhagavatam class and helping me purify myself. Contra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada jai.
पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। इस ग्रेस गदाई गौरंग प्रभु की जय। श्री प्रभुपाद।